What's it like to make a very large painting like that that has a number of things going on? Your emotions, climates, place,
yeah,
a number of things going on.
yeah, there is.
So there's a synthesis going on. How do you feel?
And if you're,
what's going on for you?
one of the difficult things is when you kind of understand where you're going and what you want to do with the paint, and you're in the studio, and it can become very frustrating working with oils, but you kind of get in a zone, and you hit a boiling point painting that you're kind of going, yes, it's happening, and then you stand back and you go, yes, 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 I know what I need to do now, and then you go, but I can't do it until it's dry. So you have to kind of go, all right, I got to stop now before I really fuck it up, because the next stage is about this layer of paint. I want to skim over what I've done, but I still want what's done to come through, you know. So I need that layer to dry out, and I need to be able to then mix a thinner wash of paint that will come over the surface and reveal parts and sometimes all of what has happened below. So you get this kind of layered effect and layered meaning and veiled meaning and veiled effect on the paint. And so that kind of takes a bit of, it takes time, and it can be frustrating, especially if you feel like you're really hitting it out of the park at the moment.
So when you were in Iceland, you worked on a smaller set of things, but then when you came back to Ireland into your studio up in Kilmainham Wood, you were able to go.
Iceland, I could fit in my suitcase and bring home. Worked on paper or small little painting panels. I worked with quite a number of different things. I worked with kind of acrylics, but I also worked with some oils as well, because again, with Philip had shown me that, you know, you're mixing up a good thick linseed oil with French chalk and a bit of egg yolk. You can dry out your painting in a couple of days. You know, and you know, it all depends on the process as well of drying. Like sometimes you want it not to be fully dry. Sometimes you want to tack it. You want to be able to drag through it to make a mark. If you put a layer underneath, let's say I put a black sub layer onto the panel, and then I'll paint on this thick and caustic white or whatever possibly.
And where did you learn these things about the drying, the French chalk? Where did you learn all those things? How did you?
Basically, he decided he wanted to kind of get rid of the solvents out of his studio, and then he thought, I wonder would other artists be up for that? And then he contacted me because he knows of my work from Galway and stuff from before, and he knows, as a painter knows, when he looks at my work, that Becker uses a lot of solvent. As I would have, I'd use a litre of turpentine in the sitting sometimes, and it just knock the head out of me. And it wouldn't be good for the environment either, trying to get rid of it. And then he sent me an email saying he was working on this, and he wanted to bring together a number of artists to introduce them to this and see how they find working with it, and if they continue forward with working with it or go back to what they were doing before. And I was kind of looking for a way out anyway. And I talked to him initially.
So it has egg yolk, it has
French
it has linseed oil.
Linseed oil.
Right.
That's all you use. Your linseed oil will clean your brush, and it also works as you know, for thinning down your paint and everything. And your egg works as a binding agent and a dryer, and your French chalk works as a bulking agent.
Right.
So
and the chalk itself becomes almost like gypsum and gesso, you know. So
yeah, you mix the chalk, coats it up, and it makes it thick and impasto-like, and they can put it on with a trowel. It's nearly like plastering a wall if you want to, depending on how far you want to push it. You have to be careful though, because if it dries out too quick, it can crack. Not unless you want it to crack. Maybe you do. You know, and as it's drying out anyway, you can put on a bit of linseed oil after it dries, and it can soak into it. You can prevent the cracking. You can pull it into the paint. But the egg,
Very cool. Very,
the egg works as the binder to bind the elements together, you know, and the dry.
very good.
But anyway, as I was saying, when
And if you're hungry, you can just take a bite, you know. If you're...
take a bit of egg yolk. But you know,
So yeah, I mean, yeah,
and then you can scratch through it at a certain time. You pick your time in regards what it is you want to do with your mark, how much drier you want to paint. So it becomes a process where you start learning about when you put, you know, tacky paint over a tacky paint, or a dry paint over a wet paint, wet over dry.
yeah. I think the technique or the process informing the final work is something that a lot of people don't think about. You know, they just look at the final results. So, I mean, one of the things that I think happens in art studios and in my experience as an artist, you know, visiting artist studios, is that you get quite an insight into the how of things and perhaps even the why of things. You know, going to an art opening, whilst it's supposed to be eye-opening, you know, it's the opening of this, you know, show, and you know, you don't necessarily get a sense of the way that the materials were used and the purposes for which they were used, you know. So,
Yeah.
and did you find using these materials, these old approaches towards anti-solvent paint, to be an epiphany, like you've learned something, you've been shocked by it or surprised by it?
I've always been someone when I paint who gets very interested in his materials, you know. Like I go through phases of, I did, you know, whatever, back 10, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, you know, I did, like, say 8 years ago, I did a lot of work with inks, actually. I did a lot of paper pieces with inks and different inks. I haven't used inks, you know, in 5 years since. And then before that, I did a number of drawings, lots of charcoal. I did a lot of work with compressed charcoal, especially. And I really liked working with it. And, you know, through it all, I've painted. But I always loved kind of to figure out what I can get out of the material I had. So when Philip was talking about this, I was saying, I'm game. You know, I'd like to see what the capabilities are, and I'd like to kind of be able to walk in and out of the studio without giving myself a second headache, poisoning myself, or anything like that. So I was up for it, and I kind of used Iceland as a kind of a time to kind of experiment a little bit, because I wasn't really confident with it, even though this a couple of years ago, but I hadn't had the opportunity to really try it out. So I worked with it in Finland on a smaller scale to kind of get an idea of what I could do and how, you know, the timing. Because yeah, it's all about timing with regards to paint, how quickly it dries or thins, and how far you can push the bulking of the paint, you know, without it cracking and falling off or something. So then when I came back, I kind of, you know, went for it.